What's up? Brett Snodgrass here. We are in the hizzy. What's going on? I got Staci Gray on the podcast with me today. She runs a company called Organize to Scale. She's helping literally entrepreneurs get no longer trapped by the operational chaos in their businesses, and her sensational desire for freedom really matches one of my strongest desires of freedom. I'm sure that if you're an entrepreneur, you have a sense of desire of freedom. She really talks about that. So I got Staci Gray on this podcast with me today. A couple things going on, guys. Number one, I got this thing, this big thing, this awesome thing called the Men's Awakening Retreat. It's going to be in Helen, Georgia, in the mountains, June 25th to the 28th. If you are a man, you own a business, and you want to go deeper in your faith and in raw relationships with other businessmen, you got to check this out. IronDeep.com. We're creating an amazing community of men, business owners of faith. We're going after it. It is going to be awesome. It is like the early church, and we are pursuing the Father together. So make sure you guys check that out, IronDeep.com. Love to see you at the retreat. And just apply. I'll chat with you, and we'll talk about that. Also on YouTube, we have the Iron Deep YouTube channel, and we're putting out videos every single week. This podcast is on our YouTube channel. Plus, we also have other videos that really is just talking about the struggles that men go through, that internal war of the soul that as men we go through, the things that we don't talk about, we lay out on our YouTube channel. So make sure you check that out. We also have a new podcast. Well, it's not new, but it's a new one that I've joined, that I actually started a few years ago, called the Indie Investor. If you're an Indianapolis real estate investor and you're interested in that, make sure you check out the Indie Investor podcast. And me and my bro Randy Placencia, we run that show with some other guests as well. So check that out. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce you to the one and only Staci Gray. What's going on, Staci?
Hey there. So great to be here with you.
Yes, you too. We've already had a conversation for about 15 minutes, and I've already learned so much. So I know our audience is going to as well, because you have a business, Organize to Scale. The words that really popped out to me were how to no longer stay trapped in the operational chaos. And I know I'm a father of four. I run multiple businesses. So my life, I look around, I'm like, wow, it's just, I have so much going on, so much chaos. How do I organize this to survive and to stay sane? And that's what we're going to talk about today. I know a lot of our listeners can relate too. Before we just start diving into Organize to Scale, let's just talk about you, Staci Gray. Like, who are you and how did you get started? How did you get into Organize to Scale?
Yeah, so my father is a very successful entrepreneur and in real estate investing. And when I was actually homeschooled and I went to independent studies 2 days a week, we were taught to be very resourceful. I graduated high school at 16 and I wanted to go off to college, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And when you're young, you don't really know. Like, you need to experiment a little bit to see what resonates with you. So my father was already in business and said, hey, you're 16. I don't want to send you to college. So why don't you come work with me for 2 years? And when you're 18, if you want to go to college, you can. And you're not going to miss anything because you're the same age as everybody else. I'm like, okay, fine. So I start answering the phones at his company. And after probably 6 months, maybe less, I said, I don't want to answer the phones anymore. I don't enjoy answering the phones. And he said, that's fine. You don't have to. And then handed me the book E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And he said, you don't have to answer phones, but you have to hire and train your replacement. And so I read E-Myth, and then I started realizing, okay, I can put all the systems and processes in place to train this person, but then I'm going to have to manage this person. And I don't know how to manage people or lead people. So then I read, you probably see behind me my library, but every book on leadership and management and building culture. And I eventually worked my way up to being the president of that company. I still run that company, or my company runs that company. And I bought my first property when I was 18. And did not go to college and just have been building and scaling businesses since then. I've had a lot of wins and I've had a ton of losses. And in the wins, you learn what works, which is nice, but in the losses, you really learn what doesn't work and how to make sure that you make adjustments in your life and your businesses and your even within yourself so that you can prevent those same mistakes again in the future.
Wow, that's an amazing story, by the way. Very unique, very unusual to grow up in that family, number one. I actually just did a podcast with a college student, and we were just talking about that before the show, that he called me up a few weeks ago and wanted to ask me questions about how to get started in real estate. He heard me on another podcast, and I said, well, hey, instead of just sitting down for coffee and asking me a bunch of questions, let's just put it into a podcast. So he's about 20 years old. I have a 16-year-old daughter, so I'm trying to like pour into her. I want to ask this particular question. What would you tell that age range from 16 to 22 years old? Maybe they're thinking about going to college. Maybe they say the words, I want to experience college, right? Or something like that. That's what my daughter would particularly say. And you didn't go down that road. What advice would you give to that person that's like, yeah, I don't know if I should go to college. I want to, I just want to experience it, but then I want to do something else. And what from your own experience, would you have changed the way you did it and grew up, or not?
I don't know that I would change it. I'm really happy with the lessons I learned, the way my life has unfolded. I don't think I have a firm belief that you can't gift somebody consciousness, you can't gift somebody awareness. And as much as we want to do that for the people we care about and that we love, everyone has their own journey in life, and the world provides feedback that then you readjust. And so I'm grateful that the journey that I took, I got to readjust, I got to learn, and I got to get to where I am right now. I do think that something that was really prominent in my life was goal setting. And that for me always gave me a North Star. It said, okay, this is where I'm at and this is where I want to go. How can I get there? And when you have that, it makes you realign the actions you take. So if the goal is to, as an entrepreneur, to find something that you love that pays you to do it and to generate that passive income, then maybe college may or may not be in line with that long-term goal. If your goal is to be a doctor, I really hope you go to school and become educated.
Or not, or at least don't work on me.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want you working on me if you didn't do it. So I think the answer is it depends, but I think the thing that it depends on is what your goal is. If your goal is to do something specific, then make actions and plans in that direction. My goal was to develop passive income. I wanted to figure out a way to invest in assets that paid me to live the lifestyle I wanted to live. And the two routes I took to do that were investing in real estate and real assets. And then the other path was investing in businesses. And both of those actually turned out to be a different investment, which was an investment in myself. And the investment I made in myself was, and this came from one of my mentors, Ken McElroy, who is a rich dad advisor for Robert Kiyosaki, good friend of ours. And he said, the biggest thing you want to do if you want to change your life is change who you hang around. So with that insight, I said, okay, if I want to invest in real estate and I want to build businesses, who are the people that I know that I could get closer to who are doing that I can learn from? And I just intentionally started making decisions and choices and putting myself in rooms with those people so I could learn. And eventually the rooms that I started getting into were bigger rooms. So the insights and lessons I received were more helpful. And then I think the other part of it that helped get me to where I am right now is application. So a lot of us, you can consume podcasts and you can consume books, but if you don't take that education and those insights and turn it into something actionable in your life isn't going to change. And also with mentors, and I know that you mentor folks as well, that mentors like to see that when they feed into somebody, that person applies it and then circles back and says, hey, you mentioned this and I did it and I got this reward.
Mm,
When you do that, a mentor is like, oh, I'm going to feed into you even more.
yeah.
And so when I started doing that, my mentors just would keep coming to me because it's like, oh, this is the best student. They're doing exactly what I'm saying and they're getting results. So I think just full circle, set a goal, figure out who's doing what you want to be doing, get yourself surrounded by them. When they make recommendations, do it, and then circle back to them and say, hey, I did it. Any other next steps? And that progressed me so far
I love
without
that.
going to college.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a simple thing, like goals. And one of the things, though, like I mentioned, I have 4 kids, and we've been trying to set small goals for them. And goals, it's just so powerful. For example, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and she kept coming down every single night and getting in bed with my wife and I every single night, and it just kind of corrupted our sleep, and it was just this kind of crazy thing, and it lasted for months, 6, 7, 8 months. And then I saw one of my mentors, and so he said, hey, you need to start setting these small little goals with your kids. So we set a goal. Hey, this week I would love for you to sleep in your bed just one night. Let's just
Yeah.
have one night. And then she did it like 2 or 3 nights. And now, literally 3 weeks later, she doesn't come down at all. And it's so powerful. And I think I used to be a goal, but sometimes, and maybe let's just get into when we're in that operational chaos. Now I have businesses and I'm setting, goals for the business, but sometimes I don't have that time or that bandwidth to, like, even think about my own personal goals, and I'm just kind of in that operational mess. And I want to talk about that a little bit because that's obviously where you really come in. You're very goal oriented, focused, have a lot of mentors in your life, gotten in a lot of rooms, and you've created this business organized to scale. And what I've seen is, especially in this season, as I mentioned to you, is a lot of real estate people have had to step back into their business, or now they're doing more than they were before. Maybe there was a period of the last 2, 3, 4 years that they got really comfortable. The market was doing great. They're like, oh, I only work 5 hours a week and life is great. And now they're having to step back in, and a lot of these feelings of operational chaos, trying to figure things out, have started to consume them again. So talk to that person right now. Like, this is what you do. Someone who's kind of just in that rat race, right? Just wearing all the hats, doing everything, and just trying to figure things out. Where do they
Yeah.
kind of start from there?
So actually, the idea for organized to scale came from our own experience with this exact thing. So we had our family businesses that I mentioned earlier, and we went through the 2008 crash and had to restructure and then rebuild. And we got to a place where we were in the business. And then my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Mm.
And my father was very much trapped in the business, working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And part of it was because he was so passionate about what he does. And I think that traps as entrepreneurs sometimes is not necessarily just the operational chaos, but when you are mission minded and you love what you do, you're a little bit obsessed with it, and you want to be so involved in it. And so we kind of do it to ourselves sometimes, from a passion standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But when in our scenario, when my mother got diagnosed, it was like the highest priority is now her. So even our passion for the business, it was trumped. And so we said, okay, we have to create freedom again. We cannot stay here trapped. And so we build businesses in a 3-step process. Step 1, and your real estate audience will really appreciate this. Step 1 is architect. An architect is where the visionary of the organization works with a design team to architect and blueprint the business. And then once it's blueprinted, it gets handed to a general contractor who aggregates all their resources and supplies to build the essential infrastructure for the business. Mm-hmm. And then it gets passed to an operate team, and the operate team lives in the house and maintains it. So think of it as like a tenant and a property manager. So there are 3 different qualifications for each of those phases. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes in the beginning, what created operational chaos is we would take people who were operation minded, tenant minded, and ask them to architect. And they just couldn't do it. So when we were in that stage, we were like, okay, we need people who are qualified to architect. And if you're stepping back into your business, you maybe have already architected and you've already built. So it's more of just a rehab situation. Okay, what is the plumbing working? Is the electricity working? Is the carpet clean? Is everything functioning the way it needs to function? That's step one. And then if it's functioning the way it needs to be functioning, everything's clean there. Do we have the right people in the right seats? And are they properly trained to do the roles that we're asking them to do? And do they have accountability in place so we know if things are on track or off track? And when you go through that and take the time, and I know to your point, it's like you're getting pulled in a million directions. The reality is that if you don't take the time, you're kicking the can down the road and making your life harder for you down the road. So you're going to at some point take the time to do it. It's just about when you're going to do it. And for us, we decided when we needed to step back in and clean it up in my mother's scenario, we were going to do it on the front end because we didn't know her timeline horizon. We could not by any means get pulled back into the business. We had to do it correctly the first time. And it actually turned out to be more profitable and it grew faster and we didn't get pulled back into it. And so unfortunately, my mother passed in December of 2019. But after that, instead of going back into those businesses, we launched new businesses because we had the freedom to do that and didn't have to endure operational chaos anymore in the business units that we had before she passed and we got it all reorganized.
Yeah. Well, this sounds awesome. I mean, I definitely kind of, you're working on your business, trying to put people in the right seats, trying to develop these systems. Practically speaking, like, what were some of the maybe just practical things that you guys did? Did you bring in someone to coach you through this process? Possibly like, maybe that's what you do. You coach people through this type of process. Or maybe like you're like so entrenched, like I can't afford any of that stuff. Is there some other practical things that I can do on my own just to think about, okay, I'm going to take a day a week or a day a month just to blueprint all this out. Can you give us some practical tips and things?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what we did. So we said, if we have limited time and this is urgent, what are the MVP activities that must get done? And in business, it's sales. If you're not bringing in revenue, you don't have a business. Yeah. So revenue must happen. And then on the operational side, quality has to be there. Otherwise, you're going to have turnover. So those things were two very important things to us. And then we had to say, okay, what people do we currently have and what is their sweet spot? Like if this is the only thing they did and it was the one thing that moved the needle the most when we wanted them to do it. So we then identified all of those sweet spots for the people in the organization that we had. And to the story that you brought up earlier, these are possibly people stepping back into their companies and they already have people in place. So it's really identifying, okay, you are an awesome salesperson. You're staying on that. You're great at sourcing deals. You're great at keeping the customers happy. Your focus is that, and your only job in measurement and accountability is going to be based on that. And then the rest of it becomes just noise. And I think we try to do so much all the time, and sometimes less is more when you're in these situations. Like in the book, The One Thing, Gary Keller's book, The One Thing, what's the domino that's going to make everything else either easier or unnecessary? And so doing that, and you could take 2 hours. You could go sit at a coffee shop and do this in 2 hours. So it's not going to take you forever, especially if you already have a lot already set up. And then once you identify those things, we call it decentralized decision making, but basically empowering ownership so that the ownership isn't felt as the biggest burden at the top tier, but it's actually distributed. And then when there's ownership distributed, people feel like they are contributing, adding value, that their contribution makes a difference and it matters. And when they have that kind of ownership and they're in their sweet spot, they're more productive, they're more passionate, they're more innovative, and their follow through greater. And so that ends up making your whole life so much easier. And then you implement that with a meeting cadence where you have the insights, and when you do your accountability structures and your KPIs and your scorecard correctly, then you as a leader are making decisions based on data and numbers, which then you can make strong decisions faster because you have the insight that you need, which makes everything go faster and then sucks you out of the operational chaos faster as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. Can you give me some ways? This is one of the big hangups that business owners really fall into the trap, is they don't distribute ownership. They like to control everything. This is their baby. They've raised it up, and it's so hard for them to let go. What's kind of a way to help distribute ownership? Like, I understand, oh, I want you to do this task. I want you to sell some houses and do that, or I want you to make sure these houses get closed out, make sure that gets done. But then that's a little bit different than leading in them into ownership, of actually owning that. Can you kind of talk about the difference of that? Managing versus owning it?
I think it starts with a leaders like you and me, our mindset. Mm-hmm. Zig Ziglar has a great quote that says, "You don't build businesses, you build people, and people build the business." Mm. And when you shift from being just a one-man band or only results oriented, and you focus more on developing people, then they're in turn more loyal to you. Mm-hmm. And you are empowering them to grow, evolve, and develop. Mm-hmm. And most people, I firmly believe, want to grow, develop, and evolve. They do. And when we don't create an environment that allows them to do that, we're robbing them of something that they really want. So when you're working with, say you're working just one-on-one with, let's say, like your example, the wholesale person. Mm-hmm. And excuse me, sorry. When you're working with like the wholesale person, you're saying, okay, I want you to source X amount of deals. And this is the impact it has on the entire company. This is the impact it has on the assembly line. This is how powerful this is for you. I want to help you come up with a plan that we can do this at top notch. And then instead of you creating the plan and giving it to them, you're asking them to create the plan. And when they create the plan, there's so much more ownership because they're involved in the process. And then when they bring the plan to you, you say, "This is a great plan. I didn't think of that. And you plugged all these things in. That's awesome. Hey, did you also consider this?" And they're like, "No, I didn't consider that. I'll plug that in too." Okay, great. And so then they revise their plan. And then you say, okay, how would we know this plan is working or not working? And you get them to come up with their own KPIs. They'll say, well, it's not working if I don't talk to enough people. It's not working if I don't send enough flyers out. It's not working if I don't knock on enough doors. It's not working if blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, well, let's put that on a scorecard. And if we break that down into what has to happen every single day, what would that look like? Mm-hmm. And then they're like, okay, so if I do this, I'll get that result. Yeah, let's implement it. And then we can talk each week to see if we're on track or off track and we need to modify. It's almost turning into a coach as a leader versus a manager of tasks. And you're leading people, you manage tasks. And I think sometimes we mistake that and we manage people and we would a task. And humans are not robots. Mm-hmm. They're not. They have personal lives. They have things they're pursuing. They have fears. They have doubts. They have mental blocks. They have blind spots. And if you have a coaching culture in your business, you're able to help them develop, which actually makes them better people in your business, which helps your business grow.
I love that. Yeah, there's definitely so much of a difference between leadership and management. And that's just one thing I really just get into is raising up leaders. I mean, you mentioned some amazing authors, Zig Ziglar. I read John Maxwell. Talk about The One Thing, Gary Keller. That's awesome books to you guys. Really recommend you guys taking hold of those. So Staci, let's just kind of flip this. around a little bit, and you mentioned that the entrepreneur, we kind of become obsessed. We're so passionate about this. We love to create, we love to grow things, and I know for me, like especially just during this season, we can become, when we're trying to figure things out, we could just really become obsessed, and the balance really just kind of goes out the window. And then all of a sudden, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, some people years go by of this unbalanced life. I know that you probably have gone through seasons as well. Like, how do you, reflect and maintain that healthiness? Because honestly, it can get extremely unhealthy. And I don't really like the word like, oh, work-life balance sometimes, but it's really, I really just want to say, how do we remain healthy as a business owner?
Yeah, I actually have a love-hate relationship with balance
Yeah.
because I don't think on a daily basis you can really measure that. So a word that I've adopted to replace balance is harmonized, like having a harmonized life. And we're full beings, we're multifaceted. We have our health, we have our relationships, we have our business, we have community. And for me, it's identifying the things in each of those areas that are the one thing. So for me, in my health, working out first thing in the morning is my one thing. That's a domino effect for me in my day. In my relationships, it's having a date night and making sure that we commit to that, so we have that connection point. In community or relationships, making sure that the people that are on my list of my soul community, that I have them scheduled in my calendar or I text them. So just having little things. I think sometimes we overwhelm ourselves with, oh, I've got to drink a gallon of water, I've got to work out, I've got to sleep 8 hours, I need to meditate, I need to do breath work, I need to journal. And I used to be that. I used to be that person that had like 10 things for every area of my life that I needed to check off. And I woke up one day and I said, is this working for me, or this is not working for me? And I was evaluating it based on working or not working versus right or wrong, bad or good, or if the gurus say I need to do it. And I think we all get to be the CEO of our own lives and decide, does this work or does this not work? And then figure out what works for you. Maybe working out in the morning isn't your thing. Maybe it's 5 p.m. You want to go work out because it clears you from your day. Figure out what works and what doesn't. And then my second motto from, not balance, but harmony. And then my other motto is less is more. And really just doing the one thing in the area. And I think it has a domino effect too. So for me, working out first thing in the morning, I eat better, I drink more water, I sleep better, I'm happier, I am more joyful with the people and more patient with the people I'm around. All of that has a huge impact. And it's 60 minutes that, and it's just the discipline of doing that one thing versus trying to do everything all the time.
I love it. That's so good. I've just taken notes because you're right. I mean, you can listen to gurus and you're right. I mean, we can just get overwhelmed by having this extreme morning workout, and then we have we have this morning routine, and we have 10 different things. And then we got this evening routine, and we got all that, and then everything's flying at us, and then we got our kids coming home, and we're trying to figure that out. And yeah, just kind of simplifying it down. And I've been really just getting into a couple of the books. Obviously, there's the 80-20 principle that I really get into. And then Essentialism is another book that I've been reading that is really, really high on my list. I talk about it a lot. And it's just very, very similar to The One Thing with Gary Keller. So awesome stuff. So Staci, as you wrap up the show here, I want to ask you, like, what keeps you motivated? Because I've been in real estate for, I think, going on 16, 17 years now. And that's a long time for me. Like, I'm kind of like, I like new things and variety and changing things up. And obviously real estate has a lot of different variations to it, and things are always shifting, and we've had to reinvent ourselves, several times. But I think that sometimes, we get just demotivated, we get unmotivated. And I know a lot of guys right now are in that season, like, man, like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. I didn't know I've had to go through this again, and I'm ready to throw in the towel. Like, what do you say to that? Like, how do you continue? And I'm trying to give these guys advice. What would you say just to keep them going and to keep them motivated?
I think I'll say what works for me. And to the point earlier, everyone has to figure out what works for them. I've built multiple businesses. I've made a lot of money. I've lost a lot of money. I done it again, and it's never just a smooth sailing, easy road. It's not always roses and daisies. And the thing for me that keeps me motivated is my why. If your why isn't compelling enough, most people, their psychological DNA isn't greed and fame. At the end of the day, most people, that will not keep you. If you're only money motivated and you're only fame motivated, it's not going to carry you through what you have to go through to endure economic cycles, pandemics, building a business, hiring, firing. I mean, everything that you go through as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, it takes so much more grit than just money and fame will pull you through. And for me, my why, my really big why is freedom. Like, it's like overarching why. I actually did one of those personality tests one time, and it said your desire for freedom is so strong that if you got trapped in a bear trap, you would, if you were a wolf and got caught in a bear trap, you would actually chew off your own arm so that you could get free. Like, that's like my insatiable appetite for freedom. Wow. And but freedom for me also includes impact, because I see the people around me getting trapped. And so my why is to untrap trapped entrepreneurs. And that means I don't want to be trapped. And sometimes there's moments even in my business that I get trapped because we're pushing on a launch, we're pushing on a project. And I think we have to manage our psychology that it's seasonal. Just like our life is seasonal, our businesses are seasonal, our relationships are seasonal, and the grit to endure that is the why. So in a marriage, your why is a healthy, thriving, intimate, connected relationship. You may get in an argument, but the why and your commitment carries you through. In business, who you're serving and the pain they're enduring is your why, and it carries you through. So it has to be something, for me, greater than myself, because money and fame is just not enough. And when you get to the heart of it for yourself, you'll do so much more for a mission and a cause than you will do just for a financial reward.
I love that. I love that. So good. So good. I love freedom too. I have a strong desire for that. I would probably chew off my arm in the bear trap as well.
Yeah.
So, Staci, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I know that you're helping out so many entrepreneurs. And right now, again, as I mentioned before, a lot of our listeners do feel that sense of chaos in their life, trapped, just trying to figure things out, what's working, what's not working. In this season of the real estate industry. So thank you so much. But if someone wants to get a hold of you, learn more about organizing to scale, I'm sure that you can help them. Where would they go?
Yeah, I actually have a free report that maybe would help them. It's 4 tips for quickly organizing your business to scale. And they can send an email to scale@organizetoscale.com to get a copy of it.
Awesome.
And thank you for having me. I hope that it serves your audience and creates the freedom from the operational chaos and the courage to just keep going through what's happening in the economy as well, because the world really needs entrepreneurial leaders right now.
Amen. Amen. We're going to put that in our show notes to you guys on our YouTube channel. So make sure you check that out. Thank you so much, Staci, for that and for being on the show today. God bless you.
Thank you.